Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome to my Politics 2100 video cast here on YouTube. Today's episode has a long title, and it's called Anti-Vax / Anti-Mask Advocacy is a Suicidal, Homicidal Political Sabotage Campaign by the GOP and the right wing. So I'm putting a kind of a sharper point on observations that other people make here, or other people have made either online or in broadcast media, some of them, about what's going on, about this fairly new phenomenon of the last year and a half of, obviously because of the pandemic, anti-vaccine and anti-mask advocacy, though anti-vax goes back many years before that. But this, what I'm trying to do with this phrasing and with this perspective that I'm offering you here today is to create some clarity in terms of the political strategy and also some of the psychological realities that I think are being expressed or are being mobilized in this campaign. And so and in this time where we're facing this pandemic, where we have a politicization of the pandemic, and what does politicization mean in terms of actual consequences of the actions of the actors, and this draws together ideas that I've put forward in other videos, and I will create a little bit of a multi-layered approach to this, okay? So the first layer I want to put in there is that there is a difference between the leadership of the campaign and the base of the campaign. So people who are happily vaccinated and scratch their heads thinking, who are these people? Who is the GOP? Who they're usually Democrats, the usual, or people who have voted Democratic, and they are mushing together all the people who are skeptical or who are hesitant, who are worried, who are blatantly vociferously against vaccines or against vaccine mandates. And so this two layers comes from the episode 12 of this series, which is Bob Altemeyer in his writing about right-wing authoritarianism, has differentiated between, not just writing, but his research, has found that there's a difference between the leaders of right-wing authoritarian movements and the followers. And the leaders of those movements tend to be sociopathic or even psychopathic, in the sense that they have highly Machiavellian, in the sense of manipulative, scheming, without any regard for the welfare of other people. And in this case, we have some politicians like Ron DeSantis, like Greg Abbott, the governors of Florida and Texas respectively. We have other politicians spread throughout the United States in different capacities at different levels, all of them in the Republican Party, who are trying to manipulate what are the eclectic group of people who are those who are anti-mask or anti-vax, who are many of them from the Republican base, but not exclusively there. And they are trying to use that. And they're trying to use that as a campaign of political sabotage. So it's sabotage, and it's also I'm saying it's suicidal, and I'm also saying it's homicidal. So this is they are playing with people's lives. They are causing people to, or more people to die, and they're also endangering, some of them endangering their own lives. Okay, and some of them are, we hear reports on a regular basis of Republican officials who are sick with COVID, or very severely ill with COVID, or who have died from COVID-19, who were advocates of anti-vax or anti-mask, and who didn't take the pandemic seriously. So this group of people that I'm calling sociopathic or psychopathic are, they're playing roulette with their lives and with other people's lives. And it is analogous to the, and they're doing it, by the way, as a form of sabotage of the quote-unquote the other side. The other side being the government, in this case run by the Democrats currently, mostly, okay, and the federal government, and they are trying to win more power. In other words, they're trying to damage the efforts of, they're trying to get a win away from Biden, okay? Which, some people, comments are made fleetingly in the media that this is, people are, they don't whisper it, but they don't focus on the fact that they are using a campaign that is risking, it's a deadly disease, a potentially deadly disease. Sometimes they deny that it's deadly. They've been in denial about it a while. So, or some people deny its deadliness, and its infectiousness, and they're trying to use it as a tool to get more power without any regard. Again, suicidal, homicidal. So some of them, though, the suicidality is greater the further down you get, in terms of the more on the base of the grassroots of this movement, while the homicidality is higher at the upper level. So the people who are leading, who are calling the shots, and some of them also, they're in the media. They're not necessarily directly in the party, like Tucker Carlson. I would say even, there are people. There's a weird figure, Joe Rogan. I don't really want to get into the details exactly of Joe Rogan's role, and whether he's being actively homicidal in his vaccine skepticism, in his interest, in his becoming involved in vaccine skepticism, or in his advocacy very recently for ivermectin as a cure of the COVID-19, the disease itself. So, but anyway, this campaign is so there's that layer of the leaders being sociopathic, and I want to keep the weird figure of Joe Rogan, or the strange eclectic figure of Joe Rogan, out of this particular description, and because he's not really focused on winning office. More, he's just focused on keeping his large subscription base or large viewer base, or watching him, basically. So but then you have, and Tucker Carlson, though he's not in office, is thought to have political ambitions. So they're trying to take a win away from the Democrats by killing some of their base, and also some of them too. So it has some, and it's analogous to the kamikaze campaign of the Japanese Air Force against in the Second World War against the United States. But that was a war, okay, and this was it was a shocking campaign. It had a a shocking effect upon the the sailors who witnessed these planes hurtling into their ships. But that was, at least if you take the perspective of the Japanese command and the imperial system at the time, they were at war with a foreign power that was going to, conquer them if they, basically because they were in a war with them one way or the other. So and so this current, so the kamikaze situation is somewhat different, but anyway, these are Republican kamikazes of a certain type, and the problem is that they're hurling themselves against fellow Americans, and they're hurling themselves against Americans that are trying to remedy and make better the lives of the people who are it's a very perverse and twisted situation that is not analogous to that metaphor. So and anyway, but that and again, but just to sort of to get back to this layer, so at the base we have a variety of people. Some of them are paranoid and have a tendency toward paranoia from just their own psychology, and they're fearful, also fearful of anything new. So there's a fear of the new, and so the newness of the pandemic, the newness of the vaccine becomes a problem in itself. And so that base, that's one group in the base, and you have people who are just marginalized in one form or another, who feel like the system has let them down. So we happen to have the system of our medical system in particular is extremely faulty, is extremely unequal, and also, so you have people who have generally good medical care, and then you have many people who are marginal medical care, and also are very much in fear of medical bankruptcy, among other things, or just have had bad experiences with our medical system. And they are, so that when this new and free, unusually free vaccine is offered, they are immediately skeptical of this system that is offering them something free and new, which ordinarily would involve thousands of dollars that many of them don't have, or most people don't have to just spend on medical care. So so that's a context that doesn't justify anti-vax or anti-mask, but it simply provides a context in which you have the advocates for vaccines and advocates for masks being disbelieved because of their people's previous experience, and so that gives at least some understanding or weight for this how one can, it's not simply a matter of just saying just do this thing, though I think some of that some people will respond simply to, can I a mandate that says yes, no, I can't do this activity I want to do without getting a vaccine or a mask. So that doesn't speak against mandates at all. But but I want to continue. I want to just emphasize that the Democrats need to be highlighting how their opponents are playing this game of basically increasing death and killing their base and their constituents because they want to gain more power, and that this ruthlessness needs to be made very clear. And however they want to put, they don't necessarily have to use the words that are from the mental health field like psychopath and sociopath, but they could talk about the ruthlessness, the disregard for human life, the selfishness, the self-centeredness, all these different things that they could talk about if they were willing, if they wanted to. And this is also a theme that's come up in other videos. If they're willing to really fight their opponents, and that's something that the Democrats don't necessarily do. So, but I'm giving here a framework where we can just basically putting a point on this idea that the Republicans are playing this game that is it's a somewhat new game for them in that it sort of breaks with some of the very indirect ways that they have hurt ordinary people and created more death and more by various things like austerity, by but in this case they're actually directly going to measures that will appreciably in very short term lead to death and lead to and sometimes lead to their own death. So and I've talked also in episode 10 about apocalyptic nihilism. So, and which is, I think, a feature of fascism, and I think that the Republican Party is credibly becoming a neo-fascist party, that they think of their opponents as, in some dehumanized fashion, or just, or they talk as if, certainly, maybe they don't really believe it, but they talk as if they as part of their ruthless and Machiavellian political game, they view their opponents as dehumanized or as incredibly evil, and therefore anything goes. And even in this case, you could throw yourself at these opponents and potentially endangering your own life. For instance, throwing yourself at this. The cause of whatever this amazingly weird adoration of a figure like Donald Trump or something. It's filling this void that people have of purpose and meaning, and that they are using the idea of it's apocalyptic. There's an apocalyptic narrative that they're following, where that they are agents of change, and agents of they are righteous warriors in some form or other against a hated foe, and that they could potentially kind of a la kamikaze pilots, and that they think of themselves therefore as pulling out all the stops in their own way to combat whatever they think is this terrible evil. And unfortunately, it's delusional. For instance, the QAnon conspiracy, uses delusional ideas about the Democrats as being, terrible vampiric, evil people, and they are. So they've created this delusional system which justifies to them this sense of mission they have, of that they'll be heroes if they do this thing. And so you have all these, for instance, anti-mask or anti-vax advocates assuming, getting into high dudgeon, you could say, getting into feeling themselves to be very righteous, and by standing up and saying, let's and using the words freedom, among other things. There's a number of different ideologies that they're pulling from, but ultimately they're creating a situation where they are either suicidal for them or homicidal for other people, in terms of, because of this particular virus, which happens to be fairly lethal, and very infectious. So anyway, so I was trying to draw together a number of things in this video and trying to create a discourse where people can understand at least some of the dynamics of what's going on, and some of the even the perversity, the perverse psychology of what's going on, and also trying to create a political strategy to address also the Machiavellian leaders, which I think is the more the bigger focus of what I'm trying to do here, is at least address the leadership and the because many of them know better. Many of the leadership are some of them were vaccinated themselves. Some of them were, and many of them know better. And so, but they're just playing a game. And so they need to be exposed in their game playing. Again, this is a question whether the Democrats are willing to go hard against the Republicans. Unfortunately, they've had a terrible track record of not fighting the Republicans. So, but here is another, if they were so interested, here is another perspective of how they might be able to attack this particular very naughty public health / political problem, and also it's that is very troubling, to say the least. So anyway, if you like this video, please click like on the video, and also if you have any comments and thoughts about this area, because there's a number of different topics I've tried to draw together here, and some of it is obviously I'm speculating about some of this stuff, but I think my speculations here are at least they account for a good portion of what goes on in terms of at least for now, in terms of how the politics and the public health situation has gone recently, but let's discuss it in the comments. And also, if you are enjoying these videos, please subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next video.